Right, so we should be recording. This is Jeff at the Big Hairy Dog. This is a version 9 reports webinar. Here's our agenda right here on the screen. Here's what we're going to try and cover today. Report types, I guess, is what we have on our agenda. We've always covered that first. Report types are, they get a little muddy, shall we say, in the land of Crystal, but we'll try and make a quick stab at that, and then we'll move past that, right? And my report menu, of course, is being slow. There's the original 4 from version 8, which would be journals, lists, merchandise, and summaries. And then version 9 adds a few more to that. They add audit to that list. And then we have the custom and the other. So and really quickly, the audit area is a very new area. It has to do with permissions and logging in and logging out. I have a few clients that use it, and there are some cool things you can do with those reports. I've played with them. I'm not sure how important the data is unless you're a bigger organization that actually manages who logs in and when, right? We'll come back to custom here. Journals, everybody should know the intent of a journal out of the gate, right? A journal is meant to be a report on transactions. So first and foremost, it's going to list all the receipts, right? Or all the POs or all the receiving vouchers or all the transfers that meet the filter criteria, right? And it optionally can go down and show you the items too, right? But its first primary intent is a report about transaction detail or transactions or order documents or whatever you want to call it, right? Lists, it's just I think a generic place to put lists. Lists of gift certificates in here, lists of customers in here, lists of employees, lists of groups, security groups, vendors, departments. There's a lot of pretty good stuff you can get out of here. We used to use customer lists a lot back when marketing was still, but now with segmentation in V9, the segment feature is so much more powerful than a report list here that we don't really use that too much anymore. Merchandise reports, the intent of a merchandise report is basically multi data type, right? So it's a out of the gate here trying to do like on hand and sales, or in some cases on hand and sold and received and transfers and adjustments, right? So the point though that all these have to do with multiple data type situations where we're trying to compare sales against last year, like 2 sales ranges, or on hand versus sales, or something like that, right? And there's statistics sections in here. So the merchandise and the summary section has statistics. The summary section, to get through this list of stuff here, is very good reports, by the way, but they're all one-trick ponies, right? They're not multi-data type. They're all doing something. And the naming convention is pretty clear. It's the data type, sales or inventory or purchase orders, then the level of detail, right? So you can see it more in the sales area, like sales by associate, sales by customer, sales by department, sales by hour, item, right? Price point, size. They're pretty good about that. They only screwed one of them up, and that's this one down here. This receiving report is backwards. It should be receiving, colon, merchandise summary, right? Instead of summary receiving. That would then make it be alphabetically with the other receiving report, right? But overall, they did a pretty good job. I mean, so custom and other, those 2 folders are not actually in the install. When you do an install of V9 reports, there is no custom folder. There is no other folder, right? But if you were to look in here at the installation, there would be an other folder, and there may be a custom folder, although you can have one. You can add one easily. And in the other folder, I've got a lot of junk in my other folder, really. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for right there. You see these RPT vouchers, RPT transfer, RPT sales. These are generic reports that Retail Pro wrote and dropped in the other folder that have no purpose. They're not registered. You can't see them. But if you have Crystal reports, you can open them and make them into something, right? Now, their intent when they started off, right, was to reproduce the reports from version 8, right? So when we look at one of these reports in here, all these reports were were written to mimic.
Hey, Jeff, can I pause you for a second?
Yeah.
I can't hear you over the other person's mic.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. I was kind of looking to see who that was and see if I could.
I think it's Jessica.
Oops.
There we go. Thank you.
No problem. So, thank you, Lenny. But so these reports here, they have a specific goal in mind when they wrote these. So they in fact mostly don't have new fields that might have been added to V9 that didn't exist in V8, like item note fields on a receipt, for instance. You can put a lot of stuff in those as you make transactions, but in this report here, this basic item summary report, those fields wouldn't exist. So if I needed to report on those, I would either need to go down to the SQL level and add them, or I would need to tap that sales generic report and see if I could make that fly, because it would have all the fields. Then it just comes down to my skill in Crystal, making sure that I put record selects and or group it correctly to make it do what I want to do, right? That's basically where we're going with that. So the custom folder, since it was completely empty, we dumped all of our Big Hairy Dog custom reports in there so that they wouldn't. And then generally for the other folder, we typically use that for customers to add their own reports into and have it one place in the menu where their reports exist. Now, optionally, I can create other folders in this menu, but it's a little dicey, and I'm probably not going to go over that during this webinar. It's a little tricky to do. And once they're there, they usually stick, but they can go away during an upgrade. So there's some risks associated with that are a little wacky. So we won't waste our time on that, but I think we can say that we've covered that first topic pretty well. So now we're going to talk about actually getting in and getting our hands dirty here, right? So copying a report, I guess we should start with that, right? If you're going to copy a report, you want to go in and find the report first, right? So I'm just going to go in, I'm going to keep it simple here. If you're building a sales report, the basic item summary is a pretty good report, I'm going to tell you. It's got all the detail in it, right? So you can kind of turn it into anything that that you want, right? So you would go find the report, right? First off, and then you would note the report path, and more specifically the report file name, right? So RPT S8 item sum is the actual file name of the file that is the item summary, right? So then we could hop into Resale Pro 9 /reports /summary. So this path right here is probably pretty good for most people. Now the first letter may be different. This is a virtual machine, so I only have a C drive, but most of us have an R drive or a D drive, or most of us have a secondary drive in that we put the operating system on the C drive and we keep our data on the other drive where it's a little bit more protected. Anyway, except for the drive letter, this should be solid for most everybody out there. So you find the file you want, you right click it, and you actually copy it. You copy the file. So if you're going to have two versions of this report, you need two files to house that in, right? Now, I could right click and paste it right in here, but I probably wouldn't. I probably would move this. If it's going to be my own version, I'd be moving it over to the other folder or someplace where I could find it more quickly. And that's also good because then you're not mixing up the Retail Pro reports with your own, but you certainly could do that if you needed to. So I paste it in here to the other folder. Come on, our lifetime. And it should be right there. Where did it go? It went up to the top. Oh yeah, there it is. So the next thing I would do is I would change this somehow, some way, right? You know, put your initials on it. No spaces, by the way, but I could put a little dash here if I wanted to and put it in like that or something like that. Don't put any spaces in there. Notice nobody else has spaces in their file names, right? So don't be the first. Now, it's ready to be registered. So it's in a folder where I can register it into, and it's got its own unique name. So if I were to do this in the future and copy that file in there, it's not going to get overwritten. I'm not going to lose my changes, right? And ideally, what I do when I name these, and you can do what you want on this, I leave this part here in the middle, And I typically would put like the initials for the company here. And then I usually would put at the end of this what I'm doing with this, right? So if I was going to make this into um, someone's trying to get in and can't find the webinar, but I'm just going to have a oh, nice. Anyway, so sorry about that. All right, so here I would put in like underscore. If I was making a special department code summary or something, I would say DCS, penetration report or whatever I'm doing with this, right? But now down the road, if somebody has to rebuild this, if this report breaks and I don't have a backup of this, knowing what the original core report was quickly and not having to go figure it out, right, is very useful, right? Knowing that this was built on an S8 platform is excellent. So I try to keep that where I can see it quickly.
Did I lose
All
you?
right. No,
Oh, there you are.
no, I'm still here. We're not gone. We're still here. All right. So now, next step is to register this in. So we've got a name. We've isolated it. We know what we're doing with it. So now back here in reports, you have the original copy of the report, and you have in this report all of the answers you're about to need to register this. So do yourself a favor, write these down. Because when you get in there and you're in the middle of it and you don't know the answer, there's no way to go look it up. Now, the easiest way to write these down is just to right click, select them, and right click and export them, right? Like, don't get a piece of paper and a pencil here, right? Just drop these out to Notepad in a quick second, and you have your cheat sheet. So when we register these, notice that in the background here, only lookups have to be registered. So if it's a date range, the date range will be supplied by the end user at runtime, right? We will type our own dates in, right? We're perfectly capable of that. Numeric range, again, supplied by the end user, and/or logic supplied by the end user. So we don't need an answer to any of those kind of fields, right? We only need answers to lookups. If it's going to have to be looked up in the database, we got to know what field to look it up in, right? We got to make that connection. And as annoying as that is, I did not know this in the beginning, but Retail Pro had to write special code to allow us to connect and look up to those fields. So I wish they'd taken it a step further and sort of automatically resolved those, but I guess there are some issues there and they didn't. So we have to do it. I still feel better knowing that they allowed us the ability to do that. So now I always go to the menu where I'm going to register this report. And I click into that menu, put myself on one of these. If it's the first time you're registering into other, you won't have another menu, and you will have to pull the drop-down menu in and put yourself in the other menu manually. And so there's nothing I can do to make that easier. But I can tell you that it is really easy when you're registering a report. I just clicked register report on the right-hand side. That's all I did so far. So I went into the other menu, I clicked register report. Notice that because I'm in the other menu, it says other here already, right? So I don't have to touch that drop-down menu because I'm already there. It's really, really easy to forget to pull that one down. I'm just going to tell you, having made that mistake a couple of dozen times, where you put it in the other folder, you register it, then you go to look in the other menu, it's not there, and then you go looking around, you find it somewhere in summary or in custom, and then you have to move it from this menu to that menu. Like, better just to get it right the first time, really is. So if we're going to make this, we could call this test DCS summary. That's a fine goal, right? And then we have to So we name it, we click register report, we make sure we're in the right folder, we give it a name, we then click the little button here in the path, and we go find that file we just made, right? So it opens up, we go in, we find that file, which should be, what did I call it? I call it, there it is. So BHD test, no spaces, right? And click open. Now, when I click open, my cursor, my pointer is going to turn into a little SQL like symbol, right? And a stupid trick, but it's true, it works, is that float the mouse over the reports icon at the bottom of the screen, and it will speed up the process. I don't know why that works. It shouldn't work, but it does. So I click like that, it starts spinning. I float over this thing down here, and it usually pops the data in quicker. Then if I click into here, which I do need to click in here, right, it's going to do that SQL thing again and again. By putting my focus on this little icon down here, it usually pops into that thing. So you can, if you don't highlight that item at the bottom, it'll get there, but it might take 30 seconds, right? So, you know, if you're in a hurry, definitely float your mouse down and hover over that report icon, right? Because it will help you. So our date ranges, we don't need to do anything here for registering those. You can optionally change their name. Everybody knows the difference between short date and long date, right? That's short date, that's long date. And the difference is time. So what I would typically do is I would say, sales date here, right? And then I would say sales date time here so that nobody has to guess what the difference is, right? Most of us don't need time when we're running a report. Sometimes we do, but mostly we don't. All right, so status. So if I were to go in here, I can search for these, by the way. And the first time I could try to search, I'll have to hit the backspace and get rid of the word none. And if I search for status, it is not going to work, by the way. There is no status in the menu. And that's because status is not the right answer, is it? Status is actually invoice status. So the first one out of the gate is a good example of why we would write these down, right? So if I pop back in here and say, invoice, it finds invoice status before it finds invoice type even, right? So it finds that one and you press enter. This one here, I mean, I try to type as few letters as possible, but you got to get to the T or you got a down arrow, right? So you just fill all these in. Now here again, this one isn't called clerk. This is called employee. So if you don't know what it's called, you're gonna be scrolling through the menu, and then you could optionally, if you had to, you could just start scrolling through here and see if you could figure it out, right? There's a lot of fields in here though, right? So that's close, but that's not it actually. It's employee names, and they're not alphabetical. So for my money, I would say just know the answer, right? I mean, because they're on a damn platter. You can just export them out and have them right in your hand, right? And if you know them, actually, they go in pretty quick. Some of them are weird, like vendor code. You got to get to the C in code to find the right lookup value. This one is another one of those that'll bite you in the butt, right? A UDF3 is actually inventory. It's an inventory field because there's 4 different kinds of UDF fields, right? So UDF3. Now, if you have a repeating item like this one here, you could type in inventory again, or you could type something that it can't find, like a letter X. It doesn't have anything that starts with X. But in doing so, it pops the menu down, and I could just down arrow and press enter, right? That's a silly trick, but it works, especially on the next group that's coming up here, right? This is the one that shamed me. This is the one that made me look stupid a few years ago. Active is not active, it's is active, right? So you have to know, again, what you're looking for. But type in IS and man, it finds it right away. A lot of these, like 2 letters is enough, right? No, the date range and or then we drop down to some more of these inventory fields, right? I'm gonna scroll down a bit so we can see what we're doing here. So if I do inventory UDF5, and then if I can get it to go here, if I'm in the right field. 5, okay, it finds. Then I just do X down. Oh, I went a little bit too fast. Now this happens. I get into this mode and I'm going too fast and I get faster than it is, right? So, so don't go too fast in these drop-down menus, all right? So that's actually 6. So we'll go X, let the menu pop up, then down arrow, enter, then right arrow, right? And as long as you don't rip through here too fast, it's pretty good actually. Yeah, thank you, Justin. That is true. The active always gets me too. Took me a while. I finally graduated to where I'm not making that mistake anymore, but let's just say I hit that wall more than I should have, right? But if you can go at a pretty fast pace and you can knock those down pretty fast. Now the rest of these here are not lookups, so we don't care about them. Now, if you forget to do a lookup and you click save, it will tell you that you cannot have a blank lookup field, and it will stop you and make you go back and find it. You'll have to look through here till you find it, then fix it, and then click save. And it should then, again, float over the bottom thing if you want to speed this up. It should say it's successful, then it'll prompt you a second time asking if you want to continue and do another one. Hopefully soon. This virtual machine is a little slow, and I apologize for that. All right, so that's just the basics of copying a report, basically all we're doing. We didn't do anything to that report. So that report is not yet a department code summary, right? Okay, there's the second prompt finally. And I want to say, no, I don't want to do that, right? Okay, so if I were to run this, it's just an item summary. And I think I will run it actually, because this item summary is oddly broke. So this is a virtual machine and it's a sandbox and I have almost no data in here, right? So I'm gonna say that you wouldn't run this without a date because you got everybody out there has way more data than you'd want to see, and it will literally see all the data forever, right? So in real life, you'd put a date range in there, right? I can get by with not putting a date range in there because I have crap data, basically. Now the question is, what is the order of events here? And this order doesn't actually look as bad as sometimes what I've seen, but like for instance here, men's top tees, then we go to operations UPC, and then we go back to men's top tee, then we go to gift, then we go back to men's top polo. There appears to be no logical order to these items as to how they're being put on this report, right? Which is actually true if you look at the guts inside, which we're about to do. There is actually an order, but the order is not a logical order. All right, so let's minimize the reports menu. Everybody good on copying a basic report, right? I'm going to hopefully say yes. There's a chat box there. I got the chat up on the screen. Thank you for Justin for reminding me to get that up there too. So now here's the report, right? Sitting in the folder. And if I double click this, now I have Crystal installed. So you see the icons here are all Crystal icons instead of just square boxes. And so if I double click this report, it's going to open in Crystal. And we're going to make it into a department code summary. Why not, right? It's as good a goal as anything. So when it cracks open, we need to look at some basic understanding of what's going on here in Crystal, right? I am not a big fan of those graphs, those charts. We could probably make a better chart if we wanted to, or we could leave them there. I'm going to say we just chuck them for the moment because they're just kind of in my way, and I'd like to make the whole thing bigger and easier to see. So I'm just going to click on them each one at a time and click the delete key on the keyboard and thus get rid of those, right? And then pull this up and then make this just a little bit bigger so we can all see what the heck we're doing here today. That might be too big, but yeah, it's all right, close enough. All right, so what I want to start with is what's called grouping. In version 8, it would have been called sort. But basically what it refers to is the level of detail that we are reporting on. Now, before I click on that, I want to also let you know that they screwed this report up. And then they had to go and fix it. And their fix was technically correct, but also resulted in that weird order that we saw the items on the report, right? So the problem with the report was if I ran this report without the fix, it would show the same item selling in the list. It would list the item twice at a quantity 1 each. It wouldn't say this item sold with a quantity 2. It would say this item sold for 1 here, sold for 1 here, sold for 1 here. It wouldn't sum those together, right? So they then put a grouping in. So the grouping is this little equal sign at the top here, Group Expert. I believe it's also available in one of these menus. I never use the menus. I always use the yeah, I'm not seeing it, but it's in there. I know it is. I think it's into the view, and I think I just missed it. But the point is, there's an equal sign on the top of your screen and in the toolbars that is the Group Expert. It's right next to the A to Z group sort thing. And if you open that up, this is the drill down. So to fix that little issue they had, they grouped it by the item SID, which will work, by the way. That will summarize together both of the items that were listed in the report, or all 53 of them, and say this item here sold at a quantity 53, right? It'll actually do exactly what they want. However, the item SID or item system ID is in fact a randomly generated unique identifier. So it is grouping or sorting now by the random generated field. It's going to appear to be in a random order, right? It's not in a random order. It actually got an order to it. But it's by a random field, which is just as bad, right? So that doesn't really help us. So if we were going to fix this report and make this item summary more useful, well, there'd be 2 ways to do it. Actually, there's only 1 way, but there is a sort function right here next to it, record sort expert. I can open that up. But the problem with the record sort expert here is that if I add department code to that and I say, well, item SID is above department code, I want it to sort first by department, I can't put a field above a grouping. So the record sort is not going to work, right? If it was not grouped by the SID, then it would. Now, next to it is a group. I could probably play with that. No, I actually couldn't play with that. Wouldn't work. So never mind that. Back to grouping. If I were to insert a group above the item SID and drag it up like that, now it's going to, by company, by department code, show a random order of items. Okay, so wait a second. Then I maybe want to say add the vendor code. So by department, by vendor code, then show a random grouping of items. Again, I'm going to have to add like the style number, right? Or the style description. And then I'm probably going to have to add the attribute, right? Now, once we get to there, I could leave it and let the sizes appear however they fall, or I could group it by size. But grouping it by size is not a great idea either, because it's going to go large, medium, small, extra large instead of small, medium, large, right? And if my data quality input is good, if I build style grids correctly, and when I key the quantities into the style grid, I key the small size in first, it gets assigned an alternate lookup number before the medium, right? So the trick here would be to find the ALU field and group it by the ALU field. Do you follow? That's the best you're going to get, right? And if that doesn't work, then there's no answer, right? Because you just can't get them in the right order. But that would put the items in a decent order. So if we click OK on that, it inserts all of those levels, which we're going to chuck in a minute when we make this into a department code summary, right? I would not want to see these. These are group header records, right? Each one of these has a footer and a header. So let's hit save for a minute. Always save before you preview. Believe me, trust me, I've been bitten by this one too. I'm going to click preview. When you preview something in here, there are 3 switches that optionally have to be answered if they're present. Now, not all reports have all 3, but if they have them, you have to answer them. This one here, the cost switch, has to do with security and whether or not you have rights to see cost. So yes, we're in Crystal, we have rights to see cost. Okay. Subsidiary has to be 1. It's assumed to be 1. Report sticks it in there for you, but Crystal does not. The other one is employee ID right there. Now I'm going to scroll back up and not put that in. And I'm just going to press enter. And it's going to say, please enter a value. And it's going to take me to that employee ID, right? So it's not going to let you pass go or collect $200 unless you put that in there. Then you can either click OK or press enter. The enter seems to click the OK button for you, right? Now in real life, you guys would need to add one more field that I did not add, but I'll go back and do that in a minute. I just put in sysadmin, and the password here is report. So the service is RPro ODS. The user ID is report user, and the password is report, singular, lowercase. Right, so you see what those grouping headers are doing. Like they're announcing each of these levels, then displaying the items, right? So for our purposes right now, I'm going to say right click, suppress, just suppress each one of these things. Let's get rid of these things. Let's not choose to look at them and see if that makes for a better report, right? Okay, we're already suppressed on that. Okay, so down here, I'm going to suppress all these subtotals as well, the footers. Okay, and suppress. Okay, let's go back to our preview. And now they should be in a more logical order. So you see here this short, right? Black, medium large, extra large, 2XL, then it goes to tan. Okay, we didn't sell any of the tan in the other sizes, so it just drops down and shows the one it did sell, right? And so the next one, we got a polo here that sold a small and a 2XL. Then it goes to the next color and shows all the sizes. And the sizes happen to fall in the right order only because the ALU is correct, right? So if we wanted to like get rid of this UPC for a second, I'm just going to delete that out and go over here to the database. Now this is the Field Explorer, and it's up here on the top. And there's a little button called Field Explorer. There's also a Report Explorer. We're not going to talk about that yet. But the Field Explorer has your data fields over here where you can open up and see what's in that thing. Has your formulas, which we'll talk about here in a minute, and your parameters. Okay. So in the data fields at the top, I open the data fields. I open the package that we're attached to, and I highlight something and type the letter A. It skips down to attribute. I type A again. It finds ALU, right? So I'm going to drop the ALU in here, and it's totally different font size. So I'm going to right click the size. I'm going to say format painter, and I'm going to paint that up to the same size. Then I'm going to highlight that one there, the size. I'm going to hold the shift key, and while holding the shift key, I'm going to click on the additional field, and then I'm going to right click on size and say align top, and then right click again and say size, same height. That just makes everything be pretty, right? Again, save. Sometimes when you go to the preview, it blows up and you drops and you lose everything, and that's just not good, right? But yeah, 100075 76 77 78. So when we put this data in the system, we put it in a normal pattern that you would put a style in. You go left to right, size, small, medium, large, extra large, right? Then you go down to the next color and you put those in, right? So it's writing the SKUs in the order you put them in the system and assigning a lower numbered SKU to the smaller size, which is useful. I'm just going to say it's nice. All right, so some basics real quick here. If I click on a field, if I click on a field and I hold the shift key, we know that we can add to that field, right? And click on other fields, right? Now, while all three of those are highlighted, okay, there's a couple of keyboard tricks. And if you're used to the Doc Designer, these are already something you may know. And the Doc Designer, oddly, if you haven't noticed yet, is patterned after Crystal. Like a lot of the things that we do in Crystal, we do in the Doc Designer. It's nowhere near as robust, but yeah, it's definitely patterned after it. So I'm going to hold down the Control key now, and I'm going to hit the right arrow. So Control right arrow moves everything one-dimensionally in movement, right? Now, I'm using the left arrow now, could I do the same thing with the mouse? Yes, I could. Could I drag these with a mouse? Yes. But I tried not to move them up and down, but I did move them up and down, and we had one field hop up into the other band, right? So I'm going to Control Z that, because Control D works in this tool. It does not work in the Doc Designer. So by using a Control right arrow, I don't have to worry about up-down movement. You follow? It's pretty handy. Now, holding the shift key and hitting the arrows resizes, where control key and arrows move. So shift left arrow makes this field smaller. Control right arrow makes this field move. And then I could grab the other fields. Now, I could do this. I could say, grab all of these. Now, what's the problem with doing that? The problem is I have graphics like that line at the top of the screen and the subsidiary name that happened to bisect that area and got picked up as well, right? So you could hold the shift key now and deselect, right? And try and get rid of, okay, I just totally screwed that up. I could deselect that and deselect that, right? And then I could do a control right arrow and move this over if I wanted to make more room, say for the description one, right? Now here, these are not the same size, so I should resize them. I'm gonna right arrow and see if I can make these do, yeah. So you see right there that where these were aligned on the left and they're no longer aligned on the left, if they aren't exactly the same size, they will shift around on you. So typically before I would move a column, I would right click it, I would say align left, and I would say same width. I would just make them be the same size, right? And then I can control right arrow that, nudge it up to the size, click on the other fields here, and then shift right arrow that, right? And make that field bigger. Hit the save button, let's go back to our preview tab. Now, before these polos were wrapping to the next line, right? And now they're no longer wrapping to the next line. So quickly here, we'll hop back over here and I will undo this little thing here and we will go back and look at another option for that. So I'm gonna make this short on purpose. Hit the save key, go back to preview, and these will now wrap again, right? So they're wrapping to the next line. And this is an option you can either do or not do, right? That's your call. So if I go back, and I usually like to make changes like this on the design screen, it's a little less confusing. So I'm going to click on, this is the field that's showing. This one's suppressed, right? They hit it, they didn't suppress it. We can talk about the difference here in a sec, but so they suppressed or hid the detail band, right? This band, and then they're using this grouping here to show the data. If I right click this and I go to format field, there's a ton of stuff in here that you can do, right? On the common tab, the very first one, suppress if duplicated and can grow. Those are two we have to touch on, right? So can grow is the one that causes it to wrap, right? If it can grow and it's bigger than the allotment of field, then boom, it's going to wrap around and take another line in the report, right? If we turn that off and click OK and save and preview, it now just cuts off the data where the field ends, right? Which is totally fine if that's, I mean, most times you know what the item is by that point and you don't care, right? Now, let's see about these here. If we take these here and we right click these and we go to format objects and try the, yeah, so suppressive. So let's turn this off. Let's turn this on. Let's click OK. Let's see if that works. And it's not working. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to suppress this. I'm going to right click and don't suppress this. And I'm going to try, because we're in a grouping instead of in a native detail band here, right? That little trick's not working. So I'm going to take this off, but leave that on and click OK and pop over here. It's still not working. That's just really annoying is what that is, but okay. So, you know, suppressive duplicated should, what it should do is it, when a given item is men's, bottoms, shorts, and the next item below it is also the same department, it should not repeat that item, right? That's what should happen there. It should not be repeating each one of those as we go down the page, and it usually works, and there's something weird going on here, and I'm not going to worry about it a lot. All right, so I'm going to resuppress that, right? And the difference, real quick, between hide and suppress is if you hide it and you run reports in Crystal, then you can double click it and reveal that. But that means you're actually using Crystal to run your report, which is a little more complicated. But if you want to play with it, you could. It's not a problem to do. So I'm not fond of this gray color. I'm going to right click this here and go into Section Expert. And in the Section Expert, there's a color tab over here. And in the color tab, I can turn off the background color, right? Or I could go in and change it too. And I could click more and I could do all kinds of wacky things in here, but I'm going to just turn it off for now. And that makes for a little cleaner report, right? Now let's talk about making a department summary out of this, okay? Now this is a very nice package. So over on the right, you see that you have the department and you have the DCS code. So men's, bottoms, shorts, this would be just men, right? This would be the full thing. Does that make sense to everybody? So not all packages, not all SQL queries have this department. So I'm going to assume for a second that we don't have it because I want to make sure we understand how I would get that if I don't have it built for me, right? So let's go back to design mode and let's collapse our fields. And let's go to this thing here called formulas. Now there's a ton you can do in formulas. There's just so much you can do, and you don't have to do much. You have to do the logic. You have to understand what the heck you're doing, but you do not have to write code, although it'll look very much like you're writing code. So if I go in and look at any of these things here, if I go look at this one here, margin percent, that's going to look like you're writing code, right? And if we look at the other one, it's going to be worse, by the way. This one here is this one has levels, so it's going to be longer, right? But it looks bad. It's not bad. So if I right click this and I want to make a department code, so I want men's out of men's, bottoms, shorts. I just want men's, right? And if you've used Excel, you've probably seen this, by the way. I'm going to say new, and I'm going to say department. Okay. Some people like to put a little, like a lowercase f in front of them. You'll see that a lot in here. And what that does is alphabetically group them all together by F, right? So if you want to put all your formulas in one place in the menu, do that. If you don't, right? It's up to you. Click OK. It opens up a little editing screen. Now here I have all the fields that are in the report, and I have all the fields that are in the package, the SQL package in the background, right? So if I open up this and I go find my department DCS code, right? Okay, there's my DCS code. I could say here, I want the left 3 characters, right? Left, bracket, right? Double click, comma, 3, close your bracket, right? Which is, you can do this in Excel all day long, right? Take the left 3 characters of a given field. That's not a big deal, right? So same thing, right? Then we click save and close, but before you click save and close, this one's such an easy one that I would never click the X, but the X2 here, that's going to let you check it, see if there are errors. So if it's a complicated one, I would say yes, do that, then save and close, right? So now I have a new formula called department, right? And if I go into my groupings here, and I think for now we can get rid of most of these here. We no longer, we can leave them too, it wouldn't matter. I think I will chuck these though. I don't care about the item one. I'll leave that one for now. But okay, in the native fields, there's the original department code, which would work, by the way. This S8 is a very robust package, right? But in the report fields now, there's my new field, right? And it shows that it's got a little FX there, meaning it's a formula. And I could add this to my grouping, right? And I could move it up and put it right above the DCS, right? Now, what's the advantage of putting that in there versus, I mean, it's already in the DCS, right? It's already in the DCS level, right? So what's the advantage of adding that one in there per se? Well, the advantage is I can now I could now put subtotals like this here and here, right? By department, right? So if I wanted to put in subtotals by class as well, I would need to go make another version of this. I'd have to say new and make me a class, right? And the class would be slightly different. There's 3 commands with what we're doing right here. There's hundreds of commands, but there's the left, right, and then the field. So let's go get our field here, which we just did this one, right? So this one's an easy one. So that would be the department, right? And if I change this left to a right, now that's the subclass, right? That's the last 3 characters. To get the middle 3, I have to use a mid. And then I have to say, comma, where to start, and then how many characters. So to get the class, I have to say, take a midsection out of this thing, starting on character 4, go 3 characters, right? That gets me the class. So then I could go back into my grouping here, and I could say, okay, I want to group by that class field as well, right? And drag it up above the DCS code. Now here I could do a subclass, or I could just let the whole code write, because, you know, it's got the subclass in it already, right? So I don't really need to make another level there. You know, up to you guys. Okay, clicking OK on that then. Again, I don't need these announcements. These announcements can be cool. Actually, let's leave this one. Let's get rid of this one. So let's suppress that. And right, so down here, I want to suppress this lowest level here, this item SID thing. We're no longer playing with the item SID, right? So we're going to get rid of that. So we're just going to suppress that and make it go away. I'm going to bring back this one here. So don't suppress this. I'm going to drag this down, this I care about. Now these, I no longer care about these, right? We can't see these, right? So these are just, they're really not there. And the reason I'm getting rid of them is because I just want to clean things up and make it easier to understand this report, right? So I don't know how far we probably won't finish this all the way out, but I'll get far enough into it to make sure that we are all on the same page. Now this level here, this is the company. I don't delete this because if you ever have more than one company, you'll need this, and there's a lot of logic tied into these things that makes this problematic to delete. So sometimes you can get rid of it and sometimes you can't, but you can always just right click and suppress it, right? You don't really need to see it. So you can get rid of it here and here, right? Both places. Just get rid of it, right? Now, we don't really care about this, so I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to get rid of that too. All right, so now I like grand totals, but I don't need it to be in the middle of the page. If we were going to do this thing all the way to the end here, which we're probably not, we would take these here. Right now, notice they're not the same size, so I'm going to go ahead and make the mistake here and see what happens. And you see how far off they are. So if you don't line them up on the beginning, you're going to have to line them up at the end, right? So then you just don't really care. You decide, okay, I'm going to go with the header record. I'm going to right click the header and align left up off the header, and then same size, right? Now quantity, you probably don't need that much space, so you could change the width if you wanted to. Now I'm going to chuck this. I'm going to chuck this here. I don't know, you could go either way on this. So I could right click this and I could say insert, and this is how we bring in subtotals, right? So we right click in the detail band, and look for insert. Now you won't get an insert if you're not in the detail band, right? So I right click in there and I say insert, and I could then insert a summary, and I could insert a summary to, you know, level 3, for instance, or level 4. So let's go to 4. Boom, there it is. Drop the summary in, and I could insert another one. This isn't, by the way, the way I would do it, but I could insert a level 3 now, right? And then I could do level 2, or I could have. Let's back up. I could have just deleted these bottom 2, right? And said, and this one here for that matter, and just say right click, insert a summary to all levels. Just let it drop, right? Now it unsuppressed my subsidiary level, but I could suppress that again, and I can also resuppress this letter, right? So I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to leave that open, right? So, okay, now let's pause here and let's hit save and let's go to preview because I want to see something that happened. So, yeah, let's go back and clean that up a second here. Normally I would wait and suppress these things at the end, but I'm going to suppress these now because that doesn't make any sense when we look at it, right? So I'm going to get rid of these things right here, right now. Right, so this here is 4. This one is actually, this is actually the class, right? And this is the department right here, right? Right, see, so they're not lined up, but you see what's going on now. Gift and the department underneath it, right? And then the glassware. So it's doing the drill down seems to be about this bit backwards, but we'll have to take a look at that. When you have quantities being inserted, they insert with decimal quantities because Crystal inserts everything with decimal quantities. That's really what I wanted to show you is that if you insert these, you're going to have to then like highlight the group of these. And these, since there's no graphics by them, I could just scroll over them, right? Right click and go to Format, Objects. And now there's going to be a number tab. In the number tab, I could choose to make that an integer, right? And now, of course, there's going to be whole numbers instead of wacky. Anyway, this is basically doing the same thing with the rest of these, right? What I'm more concerned with is, and you can cheat to a certain extent, by the way. Like, so for instance, this is a summary group here, 5. We're not using it. I could take these and just drop them in here, right? So if I right-click this summary and I go to the edit summary, it doesn't say what level it's residing at here. It just says summarize that field, right? So you could easily do that. And as far as that goes, you could even take these fields here and you could right click and copy them and paste them into the next layer, right? And paste them into the next layer. Now, sometimes, I'm going to say 95% of the time that works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it seems to adopt the level you copied it from. When that occurs, just get rid of it, delete it, go back to the detail band and insert it like the proper method like we should have, right? And that always fixes the problem, by the way. Now, margin percent, can I copy this down? That's a no, by the way. So this is a native margin percent field, but here's a formula margin percent field. And in a formula margin percent field, part of the formula is take the extended price, right? Let's go down here. Let's take the margin and divide that by the price. But it's not just the margin, it's the margin at that level. You follow? So you can't just copy that because it's at the wrong level. It's going to show you the margin for the entire subsidiary. It's going to be the same margin all the way down the page, right? So how you would do that is you would write that yourself or you would copy it. So let's just start with writing one ourselves real quick here, right? So DCS code is pretty, actually we'll do that copy on that one. We'll do the department code here, right? So for the department code, I would right click and say new, and I would say, you know, percent department. I usually put the level at the end so that I can change it quickly. When you copy these over and over again, you want to just change the last few letters, right? It's up to you. Click OK. It pops you in here right now. What you are responsible for is the math, right? That's what you're responsible for. So let's get that out of the way first. Okay, so if I go to the group level 4, which is DCS code, I know we're doing department. If we go to department, this level here, here's all the fields I need, right? Here's my margin amount. I know I could get margin by just subtracting these two, right? This one happens to have it, but many don't have it. So I think I'm gonna do it the hard way so that you guys can see me do it the hard way, right? Okay, so starting off with, we need margin. I'm just gonna double click this and say minus that, double click, boom, there it is, right? There's the margin. Now, if I put a bracket around that, a left bracket and a right bracket, a right bracket and a left bracket, whichever, right? That makes that one field. Then I would come over here and say, okay, now I'm gonna divide that by the price, right? So the margin divided by the price, that's the margin calculation, double click. Okay, now that's gonna show like a 0.45 or a 0.52 or whatever, and I want it to show 52. I don't want it to show 0.52, so I'm gonna have to add another bracket, right? And I'm gonna have to come over here and say, multiply that by 100, raise it up to a 52 instead of a 0.52, right? So that's margin. Now, the problem with this calculation is you're dividing by price, and if you gave something away and you sold it for $0, you in fact could be dividing by 0, which will blow the report up, right? That's not mathematically impossible, and that stops things in a very bad way. So I have to maybe check and see if that's 0, right? Now, this what I'm about to type in, it was in that formula we looked at a minute ago. It's in all the margin formulas. Any report, double click one of the margin formulas. It gives you this exact phrasing everywhere. So basically you're saying if not, and then there's a command called is null. It is one word. I really want to make it 2 words. It is not 2 words. It's a status of being in Oracle. Is null, right? If not is null, and then double click the field, right? You don't want to type that crap in. Then close your brackets, 2 of them, right? If not is null, so if it's not a null value, and if this field here is not equal to 0, right? Close your bracket, then do the math we're about to show you here, right? So then if you have an if then, so there's the if it meets those criteria, then you can do the math, then you have to also have an else, right? So you've got to come down here and say else 0, right? So if it is null or if it is 0, then skip to the else and just call it 0 and don't do the math and don't blow the report up, right? Basically. All right, how's everybody doing? Anybody got any questions? A lot of quiet people out there. You guys like sleeping? There's a little drool running out of your mouth? Just checking. All right, so now. Thank you, Justin, for a response. I appreciate it. I talk to myself all day long here, right? So I'm going to say, I'm going to click the X. It's going to say that there are no errors. And I'm going to click save and close. Now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it another way, kind of a trick way, actually. This may be better. So here the subsidiary level here, right? I'm going to right click this and I'm going to say duplicate. And I'm going to change this to be, get rid of the 2 here. Now they put their naming convention in the beginning. I like to put mine at the end because I don't have to backspace through all that stuff, right? But it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, right? So I'm going to call this DCS margin percentage, right? And press enter on that and press enter again to open that up. Now, this here is not DCS. This is at the subsidiary level. So what I would do is I would go up and find the DCS level. Right, there's a DCS level. I would move my cursor down here someplace random and just double click it so I can see what that looks like. Now, I already knew it was DCS code, but I'm going to say that if you don't know and you're not 100% sure, double click it, add 1, then double click the value you're looking for, right click that and copy it, and then get rid of this erroneous extra code, right? Just get rid of that. Then double click the level and paste the new level over the top of it. Now you can see that this is a lot faster and requires a lot less mental anguish than actually writing the statement yourself, right? You're just copying it and changing what level it's going to hit, right? Save and close. Now we're going to do that again, and we're going to do it for the class level because the class level is very different because it uses a formula to get the class, right? So we're going to do that for the class real quick so you guys can see me do that one once because that's just a little bit different. And press enter again, and there's the DCS code one, right? So again, if we don't know the value we're looking for, and we don't, go up and find the level you're talking about, right? So here's the class level, right? And we could take any field, put our focus down low, double click it. Now you see here, the level is actually a little bracketed formula reference, right? So I just usually copy from the comma. You could just go from the preferences. This is my choice to go to the comma, right? And I copy that and I just close that, and then I go up to each one of these phrases and I go to the comma, right? And I just control Victor and paste that in there, right? So I'm just changing the entire level. And sometimes when you are switching packages around and doing other things, you have to do this kind of level stuff. All right, and we have a question. I have a question how to run a report that can give me a value dollar amount of total inventory in the store at any particular time. You mean backwards in history? You mean like right now or backwards in history? When you say at any time, I'm assuming you mean going back into time. Oh, right now that's easy. Geez, that's so easy. Let's hit save, and so that just changed this thing so that it now exists, right? So I think we got the gist of writing margin formulas. There's a couple other formulas I wouldn't mind, but let's just answer your question, right? So first off, in summaries, again, naming convent, level of detail followed by level. So that report there, inventory on hand summary, gives you the value of inventory at any given moment, right? Just run that and you get the answer. Now, real quick here, that's an item level report, right? So you're going to see a few items. Even, and we're not going to run this, but even if you run it, and if you run it, I'd totally recommend you go 0, 0, exclude, right? You get rid of the zeros. Don't, otherwise it could be literally, 5,000 pages, depending on how big your inventory is, right? Now, real quick here, if you look at the report path file name, we see that this is an RPT. Let's click edit here. Let me in there. No, wow, this is a Retail Pro report. It won't let me in there. Fine, whatever. It's an RPT S43, Invent on hand sum, right? That's what it is. Okay. Now I'm gonna close the summary section. Come on. And we're gonna go up to custom. We're gonna go down to where it says, where is it? Here, let's see here. Right, on hand. So you see like here, that's an S43. But this one's already summarized to department and vendor. That one's an S43. That's department item store. That's store and department. That's an S63, the big brother of the S43. And that one's stored by department DCS, right? So if you wanted a tighter view of inventory on hand, right, then what you do is, and again, I would strongly recommend 0 to 0 exclude, right? That greatly increases the runtime, shortens it a lot, right? So this one here is written at the store and at the department and department code level. So it's going to say, like you can see right here for store S1, I have erroneous weird store codes in. I just said store 1, store 2, store 3, right? But for store 1, I only have 2 departments because it's a sandbox and I have no data. So and then it subtotals the men's department, right? And then it goes down and subtotals the store, and then it goes to the next store, right? So this is a very tight view. This is just showing you your master departments subtotaled, and the actual departments underneath those, then with a subtotal for each report for each store, right? So any of those, they're all on-hand reports, right? Now, before I'm going to hop back into Crystal here, but before I do that, I will point out one other thing, and that is just that there is a different version of on hand in the summary section, and it's called on hand by date, and that's right here. Now, when you run this one, 2 things to keep in your mind. One, it's not asking for a range. It's asking for a date. So put the date you want in both sides like that. You're asking for what's the value of inventory at the end of 2022. And it should not be a range, it should be a date, right? Number 2, this on hand by date uses the delta. So if your delta is not up to date, this ain't gonna work. right? Now, when I entered into reports today, it said my delta was more than 24 hours old because I'm not updating my delta in the sandbox. So this would not work in my situation, right? Now, for that report, I have other versions of that report that I've done summary versions of with a special package. They left off vendor. I don't know why they left off vendor in the filter here, but I added the vendor into the filter so you could filter for vendor. And then I did some summary versions. And this one has the vendor in there. So anyway, back to work here, right? We probably should check and see what we've accomplished here, right? That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for that blue one, right? So copying report we did. Common changes like moving things around, control shift, right arrow, left arrow, right? Layout and sort. Layout and sort is really worded badly, right? This would be really grouping. That's what this is, right? And layout is just adding fields from the menu, right? That's all that is. That's just adding fields. We haven't talked about ranking, and we haven't talked about parameters versus record select, right? We have touched on formulas a bit, right? But that's going to tell you, you can do a ton. Let's say, for instance, in this sales report, not to go too deep on formulas, but we'll just take one example of a more complicated formula that would be beneficial. So let's say I want to see how many I sold here by department and class and subclass, right? And I want to see, that's the company, but I want to see like store one next to it. So what I could do in formulas is I could right click and say new formula, and I could say, store one sold, right? Whatever you want to call it. Okay, now in the data fields here, right? I could go down and find store code or store number. I like store number. Store codes, you have to know the actual code, right? Then I could say if store code equals 1, then, and then we could find the quantity field, right? Else 0, right? Save and close. Add that to the detail level, right? Add that to here. Right click, insert a summary for all levels, right? So that's store one's sold numbers siphoned off of the grand total, right? And I could repeat this and do all the stores here, right? If I wanted to. Not a big deal, right? You could do this for on hand as well, right? You just need an on hand version, right? So, I mean, there's almost no limit to what you can do with these formulas, right? It starts to get crazy. Like I've done formulas to subtract the last received date from the current date to derive how many days old it is, and then I columnize it in those aging reports. I've done markdown reports that calculate what percentages and tell it what column to put it in. There's just all kinds of things. There's almost no limit, and all of it is Googleable. You can go up and Google SQL or Crystal. Like how do I parse a field, or how do I, all that stuff's completely. That's you just go to Google and ask it how to do it, and it tells you that you just got to read a little bit from one of those sites, and you can do all kinds of things in here. All right, so we're pushing on past an hour here, and I don't want to hold everybody too long because everybody's going to get really bored of me and tired and not off. So all right, so I think we beat up formulas pretty well. I do want to talk about ranking, and I do want to talk about record select. Record select is really sweet and really powerful, right? So these over here, these fields, real quick, I just want to establish something. These fields that we see here and these parameters that we see here are supplied to this report via an SQL query. And if I go to database here and say show query, it's going to show me the name of that query. So the name of that our user is report user, but the name of the package here is report summary, and the name of the actual procedure inside the package is SPS8. Now they've done us a nice favor here. They named the reports and the procedures the same way. They didn't have to, by the way. And in the beginning they didn't. And we had to do a trace file and to go find out what it was using. But they rethought that, and they rechanged all the names of the procedures so that the report name and the procedure name actually match, and you can find them very easily as a result. So if you want to see what it's running, that's how you do it. You go to database, show query, right? And that tells you what it's using. Now, we're not going to spend any time in here, but this is a PLSQL developer. There's also an SQL developer that installs. It's in the Oracle folder. And here's all the packages that I happen to have on my, come on, you can do it. All right, so these are all packages that I have installed on this virtual machine. And we're just going to go down and find the default summary. Port summary, and you see I've made like versions that have different functions, and we put the build and then a quick notice of what we're doing on the end of these. But that's the default right there. That's the lowest level default. And if I right click that, it should let me go in and edit it. And again, we're not going to spend any time in here because this could hurt people. It hurts me. Come on. I might start to have too much stuff open here, right? There we go. So you see that in this package over here, right, the package called report summary, there are in fact many procedures that are all nested in there, right? Now there's the one that it's using, right? The S8 item summary, right? And there is the actual procedure itself. And this is just a select statement. So down here you see it starts off with, these are the declarations, these are the parameters. You have to declare your parameters up top, and then you start in with your select statements. And are we in the wrong tab? Let's see here. Yeah, I think what this one does, this is a nasty one. I've edited this one a few times, but then here it calls up the shared procedure. So if you want to see the actual procedure, you have to go into the shared procedure. But here you see select these fields from the tables that I'm about to tell you, right? This is a big select statement. Now, they do a lot of this. They say from, and then they do a nested select statement. They build a table of their own, and sometimes they go down several layers. So if you're going to go down and play with this stuff, give me a call. Let's chat about it. I may already done what you're trying to do. And so there you see where it's got a from statement. At least that's a sub-nested one, though, right? Right here it is. So from invoice item, from store, from Invent SBS. So that's the inventory file, by the way. So that's enough for this. We don't need to go any deeper in this, but this is where all this stuff comes from. And then down here, these are trim statements right here. So this is the parameter we see for a given value. This is where they write the statement that actually produces this query here, right? For any one of these, they're all in there, right? So if you want a different version of a package, and I could give you a different version, and you could go into database and say set location, and then you highlight this, and you open up the database, and you find the one I gave you. Like, so for instance, this one is using, as we already know, the default report summary, right? And if I then were to give you a different one, you would go into the report user, you'd find the version that I sent you and that we compiled and dropped into your system, right? So for instance, it might be, let's get down here. Let's see here. All right, so here's a version from 9.3, but that doesn't matter really. We're probably okay with that at the moment. But you see my notation that S8, we're adding the workstation number, right? So if we were to replace this S8 here with the S8 that's in here, we would add the workstation to that thing. And how you'd do it is you'd highlight the existing procedure and highlight the new one and click update, and then put in the required fields right? Which is going to be the same ones. And then you kind of wait, and this little button flashed just now, right? And you click close. And then potentially two things happen is the fields that you would have wanted to add would be added to this list here, which I don't see workstation. So maybe that's just a wacky thing there. And potentially new parameters that may or may not have existed in the original package could be added. Okay, here's what was added, right? The workstation filter was added and it dropped in under the header and footer. So you can't have anything under the header and footer. You have to have it above. So you have to go right click this and go to set parameter order, and then you'd have to go down and drag that up. Now, the screen's not quite big enough for that, right? I can almost see it right there. Actually, I can't see it, but you could also go like this, and then you could just hit the down arrow. Now, in the upper right corner, there's two little arrows right here. They're blue. Now, when I hit the bottom, the right one goes black. So then I could just take this upward arrow and move that field up. See, even if it's off the screen, I could move it up. Now, once it's in view, I could just drag it anywhere I want, right? If I was adding the workstation filter to this, I'd want it up at the top because I mean, now doing that blows this report up because I registered it already and I did not register that field, right? So that blows it up in at the actual reports menu. If I did this, I have to unregister and re-register the report, right? That's what I have to do. If you change any parameter, you have to unregister and re-register the report, right? Now, let's talk about record select real quick. At the top here, next to data, there's a report button that says select expert, and you have both record and group here. So if this was a inventory on hand report, for instance, and I wanted to not have to ever deal with excluding zeros, right? I could go into record select. I could pick the quantity field. This is a sold quantity, but in an inventory on hand report, it would be an on hand quantity, right? You click the field that you are wishing to modify, and then you say is equal to, or is not equal to, or is one of, or is greater of, or is less of, right? So I'm going to say is not equal to 0, right? And then you click OK. Now, typically, I'm in the habit of going back in and looking at it, and I recommend that, by the way. Make sure that the expression that it writes is in fact what you're trying to do. But that's correct, is not equal to 0. So if it's equal to 0, now it's out, right? It's got to be not equal to 0 to be in the report. So with that record select, you can do a lot of hard-coded filtering in here and narrow down this report and make it automatically see what you want to see without having to go to the SQL layer and write a new trim statement, because most of us can't do that. I couldn't in the beginning. I probably could now, but you know, it's not something I want to do. So the record select, or on the same token, the group select, right? So if you're dealing with groups and you want to select at the group level, you could also do that, right? You could actually go and do a group record select. Okay, I just did record again. But you could do a group. I've done both. Be careful if you're using both. Be careful not to pit one against the other. I've seen people do that too, and that becomes very awkward. All right, so 20 past, and we still have people here, and they're not totally asleep yet. That's kind of amazing, actually. All right, so any other questions about reports? Thank you for the questions we've had so far, by the way. They're very good, and I want to make sure that I'm always communicating well and getting across anything that we're trying to do. I don't know that there's much else that we have time to go into here. There's lots of things I could go into, but I think that I would just hurt people at that point. So on our agenda, I think we've accomplished most of this here. We didn't do ranking. Let's do ranking real quick, and then we'll take a look at this stuff down here, right? Make sure we got that covered too. So ranking is pretty easy. If you're ranking at the detail level, right, this level here, this primary level that we're hiding, that is just a to Z sort, right? So I could go in and say I want to sort by quantity, right? I could say I want to sort by quantity and add that in, and because if I do that, again, it takes place underneath the grouping. So in this particular report, it would be kind of useless. But let's say we wanted to rank at the group level, and we want to rank these DCS codes here, right? So I'm going to get rid of this here, suppress. And I want I want to rank these DCS codes within the class and subclass or department. Maybe I don't want that. So I could also just go and say, look, I don't want the class any longer. So I'm going to get rid of the class level, just get rid of that level altogether, right? So now by master department, I'm going to try and rank the department codes within that, right? So let's hit save and see how we look now. Right, so here under men's, we have a 166, 1448, and 1620 is the subtotal, right? So really, ranking these would reverse the order, right? This would be first, this would be second, this would be third, right? Let's go see if we can do that. All right, so that's a group sort expert is what that is. That's the A to Z with the little equal sign, right? Do you have a contact number or email address that I can ask you more questions if I need help? Yeah, just call service and have them schedule a time and we just get together and then we can look at your specific issues, right? Because not a problem, really, never a problem. That's what we do here, right? So if I go to this group sort expert, now what I would typically do is I'm going to make sure I click on it formally here. Click on the field I want. You don't have to do this, but it is nice, I'm going to tell you. So then we go up to that group sorting expert right now. So DCS code level is the level we're at. We're at DCS code level, and it's already added the summary quantity to the field for me. See, right? As opposed to cancel, get off this here altogether, get on something else like on nothing. If I said, now if I did this, it doesn't know where I am. See, so I have to go to the DCS level, and then I've got to figure out how to put the item in there. I don't think that's a good plan at all. So yeah, definitely be on the field that you want to use as the ranking element in the level you want to be on the thing, and then click on the group sorting, and then over here you say top N, right? So I could say top 5, top 10, right? Or I could say like I want to see them all and just put it like an infinity number in there, right? So if you want to limit it to the top 10, then you got to decide whether you're going to include the other stuff as just generally others, right? My name is Jeff here at Big Hairy Dog. So I'm the old guy, been here since 1996, and only Jeff right now, so makes it easy. I'm just going to say infinity here and click OK and click save and go back to preview and see what the heck happens. And yeah, it reversed their order, right? Now it's ranking these by the quantity field. I could have ranked it by price. I could have ranked it by anything, right? By cost. Wouldn't matter which one you rank it by, right? So, but you can certainly do it, right? And this number, this whole column here is actually this column isn't too small. It looks like it's too small here because of what it's doing right there, right? But no, I know what happened is that we never dealt with the decimal quantities on this, right? So if I right click this and go to format objects, it's going to be natively showing decimals, and we're going to get rid of that real quick, right? Save, go back to preview. Probably now it's big enough, right? See, so store one sold 1,060 of the 1448, right? It sold all of the next two, but then it's a sandbox and I really only make sales in store one, and except rare occasions, right? So not surprising, right? These are also bold. I would not make them bold. These are not bold. I would use bold appropriately. I would also use that section expert, like these here. This is my detail level. Now this is a subtotal level. So what I would do is I'd right click this and use that section expert that we turned off the color, and I would turn on the color, but I don't go dark like that crazy. I just shade it a little bit to let us human beings know that that's a subtotal. Do you follow? Just makes it easier to read, right? And then the announcement here, I don't know if I keep the announcement or not, right? This says giftware, and then it shows you all the gift. Then it says men's, right? Then it shows you the subtotal. We could copy the summary values that are in this level here up to this level here, or we could just right click this and suppress it, right? And not have to deal with the announcement at all, right? Just here's all my men's, there's a subtotal. Here's all my operations, here's a subtotal. Here's all my gift, here's a subtotal, right? Lots of cute little things we can do there. All right, so I think we beat up Crystal as much as we can with the time we have. Let's just take a quick look at this email thing, right? And then I'll let you guys go. And I appreciate you hanging with me as long as you did. I get it if you had to take off. What we do for email is all right, so what we do with email is we have a little batch file here, and there are different versions of this, but I'm going to click edit here and take a look at this. This batch file here does a couple of things that are nice. It kills reports in case reports was left open. So if reports is left open and I try and launch a task through the Windows scheduler that says go run this report, but reports is already open, it's just going to bring reports up as the active window and it's not going to run the report. So the first thing we do is we check to make sure that reports isn't open by killing it if it is open, right? Then I just put a little timeout in here, and then we write a log file here that says, echo the date and time and say the name of the report here that you paste in there, started, and write it to a log file of my choosing, right? So now if I'm troubleshooting later why this didn't run, I can say, did it run? And then say, oh, yeah, look, it started here, it didn't stop, right? Or whatever, right? So this here is the start, and this is the end right here that just says it completed, right? And then the timeout. So this is the guts of running a report right here, right? Now, once you get this nailed down, and it's not that hard, but once you get it nailed down, you can just copy this over and over again. So if I was going to run 2 reports, I just copy this thing here, right? Go down here and paste it in there and change the name of the report that I'm calling up, right? So let's just run through these real quick, these parameters that you see, and we don't need to have 2 of them on our screen. This says run reports, right? Using this username and password. This is the report I'm running. So this section right here between the quotes has to be exactly the name that appears in here, right? So if I was going to run this on hand by data, it has to be exactly. Now, for Retail Pro reports, you can't copy that. For custom reports, like my reports, or your reports if you copied them, let's get if we're in the other folder, for instance, and I want to take any of these reports here, and I want to make this one run by itself, I could click edit, and I could just Control-C this, right? Control-C is copy. Then I could get out of that, don't save it, get out of it, right? Exit it, don't change that name, and then right click and paste that in there. And now it's going to call that one up, right? And now this says what subfolder is it in? That one was not in, that one actually was in other. But if it was in custom, you'd have to change that to custom, right? This says how it's to be exported. And this says where to export it to. So if you weren't going to export it, you're just going to pop it up on the screen, you just delete that, right? If you want it to be PDF, you say PDF here. If you want it to be Excel, you say Excel. There's 5 different options. PDF, Excel is text, HTML, and text. Those are your options, right? So, and I can help you with that kind of stuff, right? And then this is just the folder where you're going to save it to, right? That's what this is. This is where the RPT file can be found. So basically all you're doing here, if you change that to custom, you're changing that to custom too, right? That's all you're doing there. Then this just says run silent, like don't prompt for anything, right? Just go. So once you have one of these written, then you're just copying it and changing a few things, kind of putting in, and then really what we should do here is when you put that in there, right? You would do the same thing up here. You'd say that report there, date, time, that report started, right? And that report ended, right? So what that does is that kicks that report out to a folder of my choice. Do you follow where I'm going? Now, the other half of this, and really if you set this up, I'm going to suggest strongly that you have me or a tech help you set the first one up. Once you set up one, actually you probably could do the rest by yourself, right? You have to go set up a Gmail account. You could use your existing one, but I'm not going to recommend that's a good idea. You have to turn on 2-factor authentication, and then you have to create what's called an app password, right? So you have to set up a Gmail account, turn on two-step verification, and then generate an app password. And then there are these little That's not what we're looking for, is it? Nope, that is not what we're looking for. Those, that's actually close to what we're looking for, but there are, I don't seem to have them, but let's just go in here and look at this here. This will be the best example. There's these executables we've set up. There's different versions, but you want the most recent version that uses the port 587, but we can help you with that too. That's not a big deal. But the point is that each one of these goes with one of these down here, right? So in here, I could go in and open this up and say, and let's get, right. So if I'm writing a report to this folder here, right? In here, I would say, go to that folder there, right? And pick up anything that's in that folder. And I put the key phrase in. Now, they get date time stamped, so they're all going to have the year 2023, right? There's going to be a 2 in every file, right? So in here, I put all the stuff I need. Like I put in the password for the Gmail account. I put the Gmail account up here, right? I put who I'm sending it to. I put where they go find these things and what the key phrase is to email files on. And then I save this. This has to be in the root of the C, right? And then that executable will always look for that file in the root of the C, right? So reps1.exe, the auto-emailer.exe looks for reps1, right? 2 looks for 2, monthly looks for monthly, weekly looks for weekly, right? And then I just go in and I schedule both pieces. So in a task scheduler, which would be in Windows, right? I would go to task, find the scheduler, not the manager, right? The scheduler. Now I'm going through this pretty quick because it's been a long time and we've spent a lot of time going over a lot of stuff. But I want to make sure that you kind of understand the rough layout of this, right? So do we have anything in there? No, we don't. So we right click, we go to new, create a new task. And then you have to do general triggered in action. So general would be, run whatever, weekly reports or daily reports or whatever I'm running, right? And then I would say, I run whether you're logged in or not at the highest privileges. That's pretty much it for here, right? We go to trigger, we say when this is going to happen, right? So if this is a weekly example, then, and I clicked new, but it's just taking a minute to open that up. Then in here, I'm going to say, I'm running this weekly on every Monday morning or every Sunday morning at whatever time I want this to kick off at. So 5:35 a.m., right? Probably I'm going to come down and say, stop the task if it takes longer than 30 minutes is the lowest setting. And these reports take like a minute to run. So if it takes 30 minutes, it's broken, right? Stop it, right? And click OK. And then go to actions. And in here, you would do 2 things. You would add the batch file, right? You'd add the batch file. Now, normally the browse path would be someplace in the report directory. So typically, for me, it would be Retail Pro 9 reports, and I would add a folder here called batches, like I already have here. And then I would have my batch file there, and I would schedule that like that, and I would say run in the run in folder, right? Now we don't have any parameters on this one, so I don't need any arguments because they're in the batch file, right? But I would say the start in folder is there, right? Right, and then what I would normally do is I would have this here would be on the C drive, but this here I would put this in with that same thing. I try to keep all the stuff as consolidated as possible. Right, so I would right click and paste that into here, right? So that all my stuff would be in the same place. So the only thing that'd be out of place would be the things that have to go on the C drive, right? So then back to my scheduler, in here I would say add another task to this thing, and I would say browse, and it would take me to that same folder, and I would say, okay, and then I'm gonna want, right after you run those things, I'm gonna want you to email those things, right? And that should have pasted, but we'll copy it again, copy. Right, there we go. So that's basically how you'd go about scheduling that. When you click OK, it's going to ask you to put the password in for whether your computer or your network, right? Then you've added a task, which I'm going to disable because this is a virtual machine and it's just going to be a pain if I leave that active, right? So, you know, the steps is to figure out which report you're going to run, go in, edit the filter, make sure that the report can run unattended. Very important step that I skipped over because I was getting to the how to email part, right? But for a report to be able to run at night, it's got to be able to run unattended. And we sort of never did that, did we? So if we're here and we wanted to run a given report and we want to edit the filter, you have to use the filter down here, right? Not the filter over here. I don't care about this filter. This is runtime. That's transient. It's not saved. The bottom left here, you've got the actual filter mode. When you go into filter mode, typically the first time each day, you will have to switch into criteria mode because it will bring up the list of elements. And then on the right-hand side here, sometime in our lifetime, it will show us a button that says criteria. You'll have to switch into criteria mode. And then you can make permanent edits to this filter, right? That's what's going on there. And I'm sorry it's taking longer than I would like, for sure. Don't know what's going on with that, actually. And of course, the last thing I try to do gives me a hassle, right? Okay, there we go. So you see it popped up with a list of elements. And I guess I closed the filter tree. So here's our report. Here's our list of elements. This is useless. This is a throwback to a report designer that's long been taken out of this mode. So on the top right, there's a button that says criteria. We click on criteria and it gives us the ability to go in. Now in here, I need a dynamic date range. If I'm running this for the last 7 days weekly, then I would say, give me a duration of 7 days, start 7 days ago, right? If this is a journal I'm running and I don't want to see wacko transactions because journals see everything, then I want to say limit this to only real transactions, not high security aborted sales, right? And not reversed transactions, right? Just normal ones. If it was voided or canceled, I don't want to see it, right? And I could go further, right? I could filter this by department or vendor or class or employee or description one or store, right? Well, I could go crazy here if I wanted to. The point is that if you're going to schedule a report to run, it's got to be able to run unattended, right? It's got to have all the filter criteria predefined, right? So step one is identify the report, get a filter set up. Step two, get that batch file, which I can give you. I would strongly recommend, again, an appointment with me or another tech to do the first one and get all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, the email account set up, the two-factor authentication turned on, the app password in there, right? And get all that set up and running and have it start emailing. And then if you want to go copy the batch file and change it and do another one on another report that's daily or weekly or monthly, whatever. Once you've done it once, you could do it again, right? It's really not a problem. So hopefully that gives you a rough overview of the email process that we do for this version. The next version, Crunch Reports, has email built in, but it's still sort of under development. It's very nice, by the way. It's very sweet. And what it does very well, and it will get better and better as they put more and more enhancements into that module. So, but I don't want to take any more time today because we're running out of time. We've gone about 40 minutes past what we probably wanted to go to. And unless you guys have other questions, I'm going to let you guys go.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much, guys. All right, you guys have a nice evening, and thank you very much. I really appreciate the participation. I do.
So,
All right.
Right.
the LA store.
All right. Bye-bye.